Welcome to episode 156 of the Grip Strip Podcast, the Daytona Dreaming Edition of the Grip Strip Podcast. I'm your host, Philip Matthew, and I'm here with the computer genius, the iRacing Indy 500 champion, a gentleman and a scholar. He actually watched the Super Bowl. His name is Josh Fine. What's going on, brother?
Hey, I'm doing great, Phil, and yeah, I did actually watch the Super Bowl. It wasn't all that great, honestly, even though the score was like 38-35 Chiefs, but I watched it and everything. I mean, pretty interesting game for the most part, to be honest, but, the ending, I think, kind of sucked for most people there, but, football's over now. It's all over. Put in the back seat until September. We've got the NFL free agency and draft in March and end of April. But other than that, we're going to be all racing here on out. So, of course, ready for Daytona 500. Of course, coming up this weekend. We've already had some racing. Of course, Rolex 24 included in that, which I went to a few weeks ago. But the action is about to pick up here in NASCAR and everything, and ready for it. And of course, you mentioned I'm an Indy 500 champion. Well, we got the iRacing Daytona 500 this weekend as well, so maybe I can add to the mantle there. We'll have to see, but yeah, ready for another season here of stock car racing.
That would be cool to have the two pillars of what would be considered, I guess, if you're thinking about the most historic races, the most important races. Indy, they talk about the Triple Crown with Monaco, Le Mans, and the Indianapolis 500. I would add the Daytona 500 as like that theoretical, like if you're going old school, Winston Million. So I guess for iRacing, I think that would be the big four. You already got one of those. And then you can go and they got Le Mans there. I don't know if Le Mans is on the.
Well,
you were talking
Le Mans
about Le Mans
not
on
official.
Yeah, and then you got Daytona, which Josh will talk about in the sim segment later on. So stay tuned for that because it's Daytona. Josh's algorithm, is out from hibernation. It's been sleeping. I don't know, since Talladega, I believe, or I don't know, maybe we used it somewhere. Might have been Phoenix, but definitely Talladega. So it's been sleeping. It's I don't know what edition it is this year. It may have multiple editions like Valtteri Bottas when he used to be at Mercedes. So we'll bring that out. I will talk about the Super Bowl, of course, and see any coaching or GM news that has come up through this week or this past weekend. We'll preview all three major NASCAR series and give our final four predictions along with champions. We'll get into the news for IndyCar, F1, whatever. It's more about car reveals on the F1 side because they're all coming fast and furious. Mercedes is about to put their car out there here in the next day or so. A bunch of those are coming out. And IndyCar, there's news with Beth Paretta's team. So there's that. We will talk about the Indian E-Prix, the Hyderabad E-Prix that took place, the first race in India since I think a World Superbikes or definitely Formula One. It was a while ago. Sebastian Vettel won every time there when they had Formula One. So we'll talk about that race. We'll get into Rally Sweden, upset winner in that rally. But good thing for the series, good thing for the season. And then we'll get into some MotoGP testing, so what to look for there. We'll preview all three races for this weekend and I think we'll also make the picks for the front row. We'll just get really crazy. We'll make a whole bunch of picks today. Do that. Josh will talk about the iRacing Daytona 500 along with anything else that is in the sim world. And then we'll close the deal. So, yeah, Super Bowl 38-35. KTF Mahomes is now a two-time Super Bowl champion at 27, two-time Super Bowl MVP. The statistics in both of his Super Bowl wins have not been impressive, but in the end, he's made a play or here or there that's helped them win the game. I did call that brother night Harrison Butker was going to kick a game-winning field goal. Now he had to redeem himself because he missed a field goal earlier in the game. He had a chip shot because of James Bradbury holding call, which the Eagles fans are butthurt about, but in the grand scheme of things, it should have never came down to that. When you had a 10-point lead, they're only the second team in the history of the Super Bowl to have a 10-point lead at half or more and blow it in the Super Bowl. We already know who the other one is. So Kermit the Frog, he was distributing the ball to everybody. Of course, Travis Kelce gets another touchdown. Rutgers, Isaiah Pacheco, 7th round draft pick. I mean, for me as a 49er fan with Brock Purdy, but the Kansas City Chiefs also got a steal in the 7th round with a running back that is going to be their number one running back for a long time. You're giving Patrick Mahomes a running game now too, and their offensive line has come around to be one of the best offensive lines. Yeah, forget it. I mean, there are great quarterbacks in the AFC. There are opportunities in the AFC, but nobody's going to win the AFC West. He has a high likelihood of never having to travel for a playoff game unless it's a Super Bowl. It's getting kind of crazy that way. But hey, Patrick Mahomes went out there. They were down 10 and at half, and it didn't look great. He didn't play well. The Kansas City Chiefs were lucky because of one bad fumble by Jalen Hurts, or else it would have been 24-7. Could have been even higher. Could have been 27-7, and it might have been out of reach. But Philadelphia, for whatever reason, in the second half, had no answer for Mahomes, had no answer for the run game. They were allowing, yards aplenty to whoever. I mean, if you're a Giants fan, you're watching that game and you see Kadarius Toney get a big return and get a touchdown, probably wanted to vomit. Sky Moore, who was one of their high draft picks, gets a touchdown. I mean, it was like the Oprah of football games. You get a touchdown, you get a touchdown, you get a touchdown. So, I mean, at the end of the day, Patrick Mahomes, KTF Mahomes, is now 2-time Super Bowl champion, along with his buddy over there, Travis Kelce. They need to come up with a different position for him so that the tight end, if anyone really wants to play tight ends in fantasy football, they should put Travis Kelce into like a hybrid role. And then he can't, or if he has tight end eligibility or something, like they have to do the Taysom Hill, the reverse of whatever they do with Taysom Hill with Travis Kelce. Because whoever drafts Travis Kelce is going to be good. The rest of the tight ends, it's a disaster. So it's why I'm not going to have an actual tight end spot in Fall Brawl. I'll probably have a WRT. So if you want to go and spend a pick on Travis Kelce, God bless you. But anyway, what were your thoughts, Josh, on what took place, especially in the second half? I mean, Philly kind of imposed their will. Jalen Hurts, 377 total yards, 4 touchdowns, Super Bowl record, 3 rushing touchdowns. Yes, that fumble is bad, and in theory, they only lost by 3 points, and they gave up 7 there. But I don't even think that was the reason they lost the game, to be fair. I mean, he played his ass off. He was going to be the MVP of the league this year before he got injured. And not only did he lose the league MVP to KTF, now he lost the Super Bowl to KTF as well.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of thoughts into this game, really. And, I mean, really the downfall for the Eagles started, once they spotted the Chiefs 7 points there with that fumble recovery touchdown. It was not, I mean, they were able to recover from it and get back into the lead, but you have to be able to get ahead by at least 2 scores if you spot Patrick Mahomes 7 points in the Chiefs. So, I mean, they made it back up, but then you have to stop them, and then score again to make up for the fact that you didn't score the other time when you fumbled it and gave them points, in my opinion. And, it came down to halftime. Before halftime, the Eagles, they got a field goal, but I think a critical play on that drive that they had before halftime was the deep throw to Devontae Smith, which I think that should have been a catch. The NFL, I think the officials made the incorrect call there, ruling it not a catch. I think he had control of the ball before getting out of bounds, and I think going to the ground, still maintained possession of the football, and didn't have any didn't have any issues there. So that's kind of how it goes in football sometimes, though. But they still had a pretty good first half, in terms of being able to keep up with the Chiefs. They did have a couple of 3-and-outs and everything, but they did what they needed to do. But I think defensively, they got schemed up by the Chiefs in the red zone. 2 scoring drives in a row where the scoring play was basically motioning a running back lined up as a wide receiver, or wide receiver, lined up outside, motion him back inside towards the formation, and then have him motion back out as they snap the ball and get him out into space. You saw that with Kadarius Toney. You saw that with one of their other running backs that they threw the touchdown to, at the end of the game. So, when you have that ability to scheme them up, you're going to keep hitting those plays. And Philadelphia, I mean, they struggled with those type of plays this season. Go back to Jacksonville when they played them in week 4. They had a couple of touchdowns, or Jacksonville was able to score a couple of touchdowns using the same concept, and which is not surprising because Doug Peterson is Andy Reid's protege or former protege, so not surprising to see that type of motion used in the red zone. So I think Philly, when they look back, they really needed to adjust on defense, and actually they did at the very end. Leading into the controversial holding call that people got upset about. I think they had the right idea by putting a man on the running back, but unfortunately, Bradbury pulled the jersey there, and they called the flag on it, which I think a lot of people would probably argue that that was a technical, very technical call there, and maybe didn't fit into the context of the game, considering how they didn't really call those type of flags throughout the game. But it is what it is. So from there is pretty much over and for the Eagles, and they had couldn't really stop the Chiefs or anything like that, and they ran out of timeouts and didn't have anything, and basically were left with a miracle, which they weren't able to do anything with. So yeah, I mean, the Super Bowl, Patrick Mahomes, even though got injured again, he's able to come back from that and being down 10 points, and was able to, go out and score, for the Chiefs and be the, MVP. So, he's got 2 MVPs and 2 Super Bowl rings and 5 seasons as a starter, which is faster than, most of the legends, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, countless other quarterbacks that have played throughout the years. So already we're beginning to see people beginning to look at Patrick Mahomes and what looks like is going to be a legendary run for his career and as a player in the NFL. So I guess we'll just have to witness it. I kind of already bored of him and everything. It was fun the first couple of years, but now it's just like, all right, who's next? So that's just how it's going to be, and every team is going to have to go through him in the AFC at least. So you won't have to really worry about Patrick Mahomes unless San Francisco plays them, or anything like that. But or until the Super Bowl. But for me, Jacksonville being the AFC, definitely have to look out for Patrick Mahomes every year. It's going to be a concern. So there's a lot in the future that you have to be ready for with Mahomes. But the game afterwards, Kelsey talking about the people doubting Kansas City and acting like people were treating Kansas City like they're a 7th seed or whatever. I mean, it's pretty off-putting, to be honest with you. Like, I mean, come on. It's not like the Chiefs couldn't do what they could, what they were able to do. So I don't really think anybody was actually counting them out or anything. I mean, I think people just thought that the Eagles were the better team. And I think for most of the game that they were, but as the game went into the fourth quarter, I think the Chiefs were able to make adjustments and be able to execute better than the Eagles. So the Eagles did a fine job, but I think they just ran out of steam. They used up too much clock on their touchdown drive before the Chiefs field goal drive. So I had a feeling there that they had used up too little time and gave Patrick Mahomes too much time to go down the field and leave little time for them to get the ball back. So even with that penalty, so yeah, I mean, Super Bowl, it is what it is, and hopefully next year it's a different result for both of us, Phil, and we'll see where everything goes from here on out. So and we got a lot in football that happened, and I think after a long season, ready, finally glad that it's over, to be honest, with all that's transpired since the end of August all the way up until yesterday. So just glad we had a good, entertaining season, really.
And the fact that the Jags are back finally after many years of struggle, you have the right coach and your quarterback is there. I mean, I was going to mention when you talked about the refs and the catch there with Devontae Smith, the overturned catch. It's interesting since they didn't bother to replay or do anything with the catch that, A.J. Brown had 2 weeks ago. Just as an example, they didn't call multiple holds on Nick Bosa in that game. Lane Johnson was moving early, and that's like his thing. That happened yesterday too. In terms of the game itself, I mean, fine, good. Kansas City wins. Phillies fans have to eat it. They spent a lot of time going and trashing Niners fans and going to acting like they did some amazing job. And I was having a discussion like with my I have a coach that I'm working with doing for different deals there, and essentially they played the Giants. We go all the way back. We'll rewind back to week 18, and they played the Giants third stringers, and they were playing their first string, and they almost lost to the Giants. But then the Giants bring their first string players, and they had nothing. So in that sense, okay, fine. They killed the Giants. The game was basically over early on. Same thing happened against the Niners. They basically, after murdering Brock Purdy, that was the end of the game. So they had 2 playoff games where they basically didn't have to do anything after the first quarter. But you're playing Patrick Mahomes. You're playing Andrew Ryad. It's the Chiefs. You got to finish. And not finishing that game is going to haunt a lot of people. It's going to haunt Nick Sirianni, who was crying like a little bitch during pregame. It's going to haunt a lot of other people because there's a lot of free agents on the Eagles. So I don't know who's going to come back there. I mean, the building blocks of their run, Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham and Jason Kelce. Will Jason Kelce play again? Was that his last game? Losing to his brother. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts there. Kansas City, they're working with house money. KTF's going to become a billionaire soon enough, and Andy Reid is not going to quit as long as he can get up. I think he's realized like it has the same feels of what Bill Walsh wanted to do, but walked away from and then immediately regretted back in the day with the 49ers when he knew he had the team and he had what ended up being 2 of the greatest quarterbacks ever. and he ended up leaving early, gave the team to Seifert. Seifert gets one Super Bowl. Montana gets demolished by the Giants, and then essentially they hand over in 92 to Steve Young, et cetera, et cetera. But for the Eagles, it's a lot of what ifs. A lot of them fans have to go and eat some humble pie, and they weren't able to do it. The irony is the Niners lost the last two losses they had were against those two teams. So if you're gonna talk about how the Niners handled it or whatever, the two teams that made the Super Bowl, those are the last two losses they had. And that doesn't account for all the other craziness that took place in between all of that with quarterbacks and other injuries and the like and bad play calling, et cetera, et cetera. So Niners, I think, are in a good spot to respond in the NFC. The NFC is wide open. Josh mentioned it. As long as Patrick Mahomes is there, it's going to be very hard. I have to add Trevor Lawrence to that mix with Burrow, I think, is right underneath Patrick Mahomes, of course, because he's won the 2 rings. Burrow carried the Bengals to the Super Bowl last year and almost got there. So he's right there. He's just number 2. Allen has to prove it for Buffalo. He's number 3. Right now, number 4 at the moment, I believe, is Trevor Lawrence, based on recency. But on that, and then just the potential. The reality is they described him as the next Peyton, the next Andrew Luck. That's the kind of what the potential is there, and a national champion, Clemson and all. After that, if Lamar Jackson actually stays healthy, wherever he goes is an interesting one to see. Justin Herbert, has he ever really been? He plays for the Chargers. If he played for a decent team, who knows what the hell would happen? That would be something. Those two guys are intriguing players, but you have to fade KTF. I don't think you're going to fade him. I'm trying to think of who else is in the AFC. There's a lot of turnover and quarterbacks on the AFC side, and Derek Carr might be moving some to the Jets or something like that. There's not a lot. The Tua's having to recover from concussions and all. New England doesn't have a quarterback. In the AFC South, outside of Trevor Lawrence, you look at Tennessee doesn't have a quarterback, and they really don't have an offense. Who else is in your division? I'm forgetting off the top. Indianapolis doesn't have a quarterback or a coach. Either. They don't have anything. And why am I forgetting? I always. Yeah. Okay. So Houston's the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. So they'll get their quarterback, or number 2 pick in the NFL draft, and they'll get their quarterback, Bryce Young, in April. But they're a rebuild with DeMeco Ryans. That's a 3 to 5 year rebuild if they give him the chance. That division's wide open for Jacksonville. That's where Trevor Lawrence and company, using home field, trying to take advantage of that division to try to raise themselves up, possibly sneak around the Chiefs and make the Chiefs actually go on the road. That would be the way to do it. We have never seen Mahomes on the road. 5 years as a starting quarterback, 3 Super Bowls, 5 AFC Championship appearances, never played a road playoff game. So that's what has to happen. I'm not saying that he wouldn't be able to fade it anyway, but he has shown there's been some issues when he's had to go on the road against some of these teams like Buffalo or Cincinnati. I think Jacksonville, after that game they had earlier, like last month, that was an absolute nut house. I know you went there. It would be, Kansas City's fans travel, but it would be an interesting one for sure. The Niners have a lot easier road to get back there or get in there whatever. It's just more about quarterback play, solidifying certain places that need to be solidified, like the right tackle position, et cetera, et cetera. And then we'll see what happens there. You look at a lot of rebuilding going on in the NFC West, so that division's pretty good in their spot. Dallas is there, but it's Dallas. The Giants are on the up and coming deal. Philly has to go.
That. Not with the Giants. As long as they have Daniel Jones, I don't think they're going to go that far.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it more with Brian Dable and his GM Schoen or whatever. They know how to build a roster. Will Daniel Jones be that guy? I don't know. They're going to have to franchise him or franchise Saquon. They're not going to franchise Saquon, but they'll probably franchise Daniel Jones. But they need to give him competition and make him work for it, even though he had his best year of his career. Washington doesn't have, they're a disaster area. Philly, of course, having to fade, being the runner-up. So that division's wide open. Is going to be tough, and they're all going to pillage each other. Now that Aaron is in solitary confinement, I don't think the Green Bay Packers, he's going to be back with them. Minnesota, as long as they have Kirk Cousins, I mean, how far are you really going to go? Detroit is interesting, but it's Jared Goff. And then Chicago has Justin Fields and nothing else. So that division is just whatever. And the South is a dumpster fire. Ritter doesn't know how to handle pressure. The New Orleans Saints don't have a quarterback. Tampa Bay does not have a quarterback. And Carolina doesn't have a quarterback. So that's a waste. So there's two divisions that are basically gone. The NFC East is going to be tough, and I think Seattle and San Francisco will battle for the NFC West, but that number one seed could definitely come out of one of those two divisions. And that's where, if you can control your own fate, that's where it helps. I think in Santa Clara, it might have been a different result than having to travel to Philly, but it is what it is. We'll see what happens. Free agency and trades and quarterback movement, coaching movement. We'll see what all comes around with that as we go along. So I'll get into, Mahomes threw 3 touchdowns, so that's what saved him. He only had 6 incompletions, 182 yards passing. Is it 226 total with the yards. Pacheco 15 for 76 and a touchdown was huge. Then Kelsey gets 6 for 81 and a touchdown. Kadarius Toney got 1. Sky Moore got 1. And that's where Nick Bolton, of course, that's the play that probably kept them in the game, or else it could have gotten way out of hand. The Eagles, Jalen Hurts had 374 total yards and 4 touchdowns, only had 11 incompletions. So it wasn't because of him that they lost that football game. Devontae Smith had 100 yards. A.J. Brown had 96 and a touchdown. Dallas Goedert had 60. Those are your three of your best skill position guys. The running game was non-existent. I think Miles Sanders got hurt, so they had issues at the running back position. But your 3 best skill position guys, theoretically, all showed out. The defense, the leading tackler was Avonte Maddox with 6. Slay had 4. Bradbury had 4, but Elliott made his field goals, punting. He said, how does he have 2 punts with an average of 9 yards, but a long of 57? He must have kicked one into the end zone, I guess. But okay, that is the Super Bowl. We're done with that this season, so we'll look at what's going to happen. Conrad Dobler, the former Arizona or St. Louis Cardinals guard, just passed away. Dirty. They were considered him the dirtiest player in the NFL over there. He was with him and Dan Deerdorf made up that great line for the St. Louis Cardinals, and then Cardinals played for Eric Coryell. So interesting. So he gets in the Hall of Fame. Conrad Dober, one of those players that helped him, ends up passing away a few days later. Was it Trayvon Mullen, claimed by Baltimore? Let's see. Some of these other people. Todd Downing is being hired as the passing game coordinator for the New York Jets, who has a connection to one Derek Carr. 49ers re-signed Marcelino McCrary. That's a great name, Ball. That's some name. Your Jaguars signed E.J. Perry, whoever he is, and 13 other reserve future contracts, along with Quadre Olison. Lions assistant head coach, running backs coach Scotty Montgomery was interviewed for the team's offensive coordinator position at Tampa. Washington is also interviewing Greg Roman and Eric Bieniemy for the offensive coordinator position. So something to look at. Bieniemy, will he leave? Will he finally leave at this point after all these years of sitting behind, or is he going to stick around? Because, I mean, to be fair, why wouldn't you when you have the league, you have the guy, the face of the league, Chad Henne retired, cute. I thought Andy Reid would, but he's not doing it, as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
So
Chad Henne retired. He played with the best quarterback of all time in Patrick Mahomes. So
yeah. So that's I mean, and then reference. He also okay.
Blake Bortles.
Oh. Had to drink to that. I missed the Blake Bortles reference there. My fault.
No, you're good.
But we'll move on. Let's go to the NASCAR season preview. So we'll start with Cup. Big changes that took place in the offseason was Kyle Busch going RCR after basically being the face of Toyota's NASCAR program, winning 8 trillion races for them. And in turn, Tyler Reddick swapping from Chevy to Toyota to become the second driver at 2311, a year early, to make sure that they had 2 drivers, because Kurt Busch still hasn't cleared protocols, which is really disturbing, that nobody really wants to mention. That's the elephant in the room, how bad the car jacked him up, but it's the multiple concussions deal, kind of like Steve Young and Troy Aikman, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's where it worked out for Kurt there. Other changes that took place, of course, the top guys in the Xfinity Series, Keebler Gibbs, the champion, and Noah Gragson, both move up. Gibbs replaces Kyle Busch. They renumber the car. Gragson goes to what is now Legacy Motor Club, Associated, Incorporated, whatever the hell. And he'll be a teammate to Eric Jones. He'll also be a teammate to one Jimmy Johnson, who becomes a car owner in this sport and will also be running limited races this year in a number 84 car. Trying to get through who else. Yeah, AJ Allmendinger moves back to the Cup Series to run the 16 full-time for Colleague. Nobody really cares about that. Ryan Preece will take over the 41 from Cold Custard for Stuart Haas. Recently, only like last week or so, Todd Gilliland didn't have full sponsorship for the year, so Zane Smith brings that money. He drives for Front Row in the trucks. He's a defending Truck Series champion. So on top of running a third car, open car for Front Row Motorsports in X amount of races, Zane Smith will also drive the 38 car in 5 races this year. So those are the changes. Of course, Joey Logano, there's no changes there. He's the defending series champion. Penske gets that title after really domination by Chevrolet and to a lesser extent Toyota through most of the year. You go and look at last week and Martin Truex Jr. breaks a long winless streak. A lot of changes in his life recently personally, but he gets that win at the Clash. You look at the guy who finished second in points last year, it was Ross Chastain, and he got into it with Denny Hamlin again, so that'll be something to look at. Trying to go through here. Yeah, Kevin Harvick, it'll be his last year of his career, full-time season and all. He'll go to the announce booth for Fox, bringing actual credibility to it and helping Mike Joy having to put up with that, inbred dipshit that is Clint Boyer. Dylan gets Keith Rodden as his crew chief after Justin Alexander decided to get off the road. Brad Keselowski, trying to go through here. Kyle Busch, of course, takes basically the team that Reddick had, they kept it all together. They just put in Kyle Busch, so that'll be an interesting one. Almirola said he's going to run multiple years. We don't know. Briscoe re-signed for multi-year extension, so he's solidified as probably the new lead dog at Stewart Haas Racing. Rick Ware Racing, which, whatever, they suck. AJ Allmendinger, they changed some crew chiefs around. Swiderski is going to be his crew chief in the 16. And I'm trying to go through here if there's anything else that sticks out. Michael McDowell gets a new crew chief, Travis Peterson, because Blake Harris moves to the 48 car. 38 car gets a new crew chief after Seth Barber moves to technical director. Ryan Bergenti. Preece gets in the 41. They change with the, what's his name? Why am I forgetting the guy? He went to RCR to run their Xfinity program. Shiplet moved from the Cup Series to Xfinity, and Chad Johnston somehow or another gets another crack at crew chiefing. But if the Clash was anything to look at, maybe that's a good combination. Luke Lambert moves up to the Cup Series with Noah Gragson in the 42. And I mentioned Tyler Reddick going to 45. Mike Kelly, I think it's his third stint with Ricky Stenhouse as a crew chief, going back to the days of when they won the Xfinity Championship or whatever, I think the Nationwide Series back then for Roush. Then he was crew chief for him at the 17 car at Roush, and now he's crew chiefing again for him at JTG Doherty. I mentioned Blake Harris. Jerry Kelly, whoever that is. Chris Gale moves up to the Cup Series with Keebler. Yeah, those guys, they don't matter, whatever. Yeah, Chandler Smith is going to run part-time season here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 races. And that team didn't say anything. They don't have anything. Zane Smith, at least 6 races, probably might be more. You got the 50 money team will have Connor Daly at the Daytona 500, and it sounds like they'll have more races. Austin Hill will run the run the super speedways, along with the Michigan race and the Chicago street course for the Beard 62 team. And then, that whatever 50. We don't know about the Trackhouse 91, Project 91
Project
deal.
91.
Todd Gordon gets out of the announce booth because he was working for MRN Radio, and he'll be working with one Jim Johnson at the 84 car. So that's a big get, a championship winning crew chief. So there you go. Not sure. I think the easiest angle to take, other than Joey Logano, Josh, is the Kyle Busch and Tyler Reddick angle here. Kyle Busch, of course, started with Ford, was quickly picked up by Chevrolet and Rick Hendrick. He ran and won races in the Busch Series, moved up the Cup at an early age, won in his rookie year. Decent productivity considering what the 5-car had been doing, but his personality and his maturity wasn't going to fit the Hendrick mold. Hence his move to Joe Gibbs Racing, essentially taking over Tony's spot and carrying that organization in a lot of ways with Denny Hamlin for many, many years. Toyota basically has to thank him, because if it wasn't for Kyle Busch, we may not be seeing Toyota in NASCAR anymore, with all the wins he has, like 8 trillion wins that he has with Toyota. But Joe Gibbs didn't want to pay him. M&M's left, and he also wanted to put his grandson in the car. So all three of those things combined, and Kyle Busch somehow or another made a deal with a guy that at one point wanted to beat the living crap out of him, and Richard Childress. The biggest move I think Richard Childress has made, because he never responded to Kevin Harvick leaving. This is probably essentially, I don't know how many, 9 years too late, but this is the response. He has a guy that can still win and is very hungry and wants it bad, and it seems like with some of his questionable behavior, fits right in with RCR. On the flip side, Tyler Reddick goes from the RCR camp, where obviously his voice and the way he felt about certain things was going to be muted, even though he had that great relationship with Randall Burnett and they had a great thing going. The vibe and everything probably wasn't right. Austin Dillon probably wasn't really happy about getting his ass kicked by Tyler Reddick every week. But it's not, I don't get it. He gets his ass kicked by whoever his teammate is usually, because he sucks. And it'll be funny when he gets his ass kicked every week by Kyle Busch, because that's basically what's going to happen from now on. But because they're friends, it's okay. He goes to the 45 car. Denny Hamlin hedged and said, I want to get this guy before it becomes an issue. I want him to be a building block for our organization for the future, knowing that he's a championship level driver. And now he's taking over Kurt Busch's ride, and it's a big deal. I think the dynamic with him and Darrell Wallace Jr. is it's fresh. And it's something that those two guys are going to make push each other. Tyler Reddick, raw talent, through his whole body. Darrell Walsh Jr., the end of the second part of the year last year, was one of the best drivers in the sport. No matter what you want to talk about or how you want to look at him, the stats prove it. He won Kansas going away. He could have won other races. Michigan. So deal with it. And he's a great super speedway racer. So I think that's the angle that we have to look at first. Hendrick Motorsports, you can get into the two guys with Clyde and Larson, and Penske with Logano being the champion. But I think the biggest storyline is those two guys and what they do. But what are you thinking, Josh, in terms of the season?
I mean, yeah, it's pretty interesting the way you put it with Bush, coming over from Joe Gibbs Racing, many years of success, and now going out to RCR, who they've it looked like at times that they had peaked. They really weren't anything more than average. Through 2021, it didn't look like they were really anything more than average. And then last year Tyler Reddick went out and won 3 races for the 8 team, so they were able to get good results out of that car, but they were still fairly inconsistent, I think, and I think that kind of showed in their year-end result. But they were really strong on road courses, and then other tracks they were really strong on some of the mile and a halves and everything. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic to see if Kyle Busch, with his talent, if he can take that team to the next step. And if they can get more consistent results, or if it's going to be a very up and down year for the 8 car with Busch behind the wheel there. So I think what we'll see is if Busch, if he can regain some of what he had at Joe Gibbs Racing, prior to his second championship, if he can get back to the levels he was at around 2016 through 2018, I think it's probably like peak Kyle Busch right there, going all the way back to 2008. So I think if he can kind of get back to those levels, that'd be a really successful season. But I expect there to be a lot of growing pains throughout the year, at least the first quarter of the year, as he gets used to this new team. We saw it the clash, with what he was able to do, and on the flip side, you saw Tyler Reddick also performing pretty well the clash. So I think both of those drivers are going to be very successful to a certain extent this season. So I think with Reddick, clearly Denny Hamlin, Michael Jordan believe that he's a franchise driver, and they made the move to go up and get him, and unfortunately, the circumstances a little bit non-ideal for how he's going to be able to drive this season. But I expect Tyler Reddick to be able to go out and compete on a week-to-week basis, and I think he can take that 45 car to a higher level than what Kurt Busch had done last year. I mean, Kurt did a great job up until the injury for that team, but they also had a lot of races where they were up and down. So I think with Tyler Reddick and what he was able to do in the 8 car, I think if you put him in the 45 car, I think he's going to do even better. So you got those 2 drivers there, and you're going to see both of them, to an extent, I think perform pretty well. So expect a lot of things that happen out of both those cars, and I think the 8 car will get a couple of wins this year, and I think 45 car, I think they get multiple wins with Reddick behind the wheel. So should be a good year for both those cars and everything. And I think some of the other teams, I think Stewart Haas, we've got to look at them as a team to look out for, because last year obviously they didn't really have a great year overall. Harvick was off for most of the year until his 2 wins, and then he started out, looked like he might have a good playoffs, but he quickly fell out of it, and now it's going to be his last season. So I think he's going to be extra motivated to try to end on a good note with his career. You've got Ryan Preece, who earned the ride, I think, in the 41. And, I think he's going to want to prove that, he belongs in that car and in the Cup Series in general. So, I think he's going to have a lot going for him in that car this year. Almirola, I think, still going to be the same old Almirola, but maybe a little bit better, than what he did last year in 21. So maybe back to his form in 2020 and 2019. So maybe that happens. And then I think Chase Briscoe, obviously, last year, first win, and then somehow made it all the way to the the final race before the championship 4 race. So I think Briscoe, if he can build upon what he did last year, definitely think he can be a little bit more realistic shot to make it into at least the Elite Eight. So I think he's got to just be a little bit more consistent than what he was in last year, and I think I think it looks like the Fords. Based on what we saw in the Clash, if we're gonna base it on that, it looks like they're gonna be a little bit better than what they were last year. So it should be pretty interesting there. I think with other teams, you mentioned Hendrick. I think it's gonna be Kyle Larson trying to be better than what he was in 22. He's still pretty dominant at times, but a lot more inconsistent than 21. And I think Chase Elliott. I think he's still going to be the same as what he was last year, but I think he's going to want to be certainly better than how he did in the playoffs. So he was really, even though he made the Final Four, we talked about him, wasn't really all that consistent and kind of just rested on his laurels of being the regular season champion. To get in there. So it's going to be interesting. I think the balance between the Hendrick Chevys and the Childress Chevys, and the other teams that RCR has support, and then also you throw in Jimmy Johnson's Legacy Motor Club with Richard Petty and Allegiant. I think can they be competitive, or all of those teams kind of maintain a level of competitiveness to go up against the Fords and the 6 Toyotas. So I think Chevy, they've got a lot to prove. They got a lot of new drivers and new teams. So, I think, they have a lot to prove for them. And, also, I think, with Ford, they want to have more of their cars be competitive outside of Penske. So, I think, those cars are going to be good. And then, with Toyota, I think, they're going to be more, balanced overall. They've been very top heavy with Gibbs for many years, and now I think with 2311 beginning to ascend, I think they're going to have more success there. And I think they also want to see all 4 of their Toyotas, including Ty Gibbs, perform well every year. So I think definitely it's going to be an interesting year competitively speaking. We'll see if they have the same amount of wins, or if they reach the same amount of wins from last year, 19 different winners, very unusual amount of winners. So can they reach that or get close to that number, or is it going to regress back to the mean, to what we saw before? And I think definitely think we'll have a lot of change, or storylines throughout the year that kind of reflect all the changes that happened in the off season, for sure.
Yeah, definitely something to look at, and it'll be more apparent during the West Coast swing here, coming up after the first race, of course, which is the Super Bowl Stock Car Racing in Daytona 500. They'll have that. Also have the Atlanta Super Speedway lottery as well. So a couple Super Speedway races, see if there's been any real improvement with the car there. We have to see what it's going to do on short tracks and road courses where there's definite issues. That there is a change. There won't be any stage breaks at road courses, so it'll actually be somewhat of an organic race again. So that's nice. Which might help with the road course racing a bit there too. I guess, you just got done, and it's very early, so we're going and doing these predictions just off the cuff, essentially, like Bobo would like to say, off the cuff, off the roof. What I'll go first, or unless you have an idea, or you had them
No,
set.
He can go first on this one.
So now look at that. They have 2 pages. Look at that for the I guess they changed the formatting of the there is 42. Yeah. So I think for the Final Four this year, and this is just completely non-scientific, of course, thinking about what happened last year, but kind of considering certain pieces and certain moving parts. I will say that Kevin Harvick will make the Final Four and have a chance to walk off as a champion, similar to what Jeff Gordon did in 2015, but wasn't able to close the deal. That was Kyle Busch's first championship. Interestingly, I think Kyle Busch will be in the Final Four as well. The Toyota representative will not be Dennis Hamlin. I think it'll be Martin Truex Jr. He has a bounce back year this year after. I mean, he was fourth in points. To be honest, it wasn't like he had a horrible year. He just didn't get the win to lock him into the playoff, and he got wrecked at Daytona, which everybody wrecked, and that 400, and that cost him a chance at the playoffs. But there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of changes for Truex. Needs to bounce back in a sense after a certain aspects, rough year. My fourth pick here for this season, for season 2023, I'm going to go with Clyde. So my picks for, I guess we'll put them in the NASCAR thing. So Phil's Final Four picks are going to be Harv, Kyle Busch, Truex, Clyde. And my champion pick will be Kevin Harvick. I'm going all in on the vibe that Kevin Harvick, they've been close so many times. Ever since he and Rodney Childers have been together, I think it's the whole Cinderella story thing. I'm feeding into it. That they made progress. It's been a few years of them being behind. The team has made progress. He wants to leave big and walk off as a champion, I think. And let's be fair, they're racing at his best racetrack. You know, that's where the finale is. Literally his best racetrack. He has more top 10 finishes than at that racetrack than any other driver has had in the history of NASCAR Cup Series racing. He'll need to get more than a top 10 though, but we will see what happens with that. There's plenty of drivers that could go and mess that whole thing up. So, Josh, who do you think will be in the Final Four and your early championship pick?
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting playoffs this season, and I think you had some pretty good picks there. I think for me, I think Martin Truex can make it into the Final Four, so I'll agree with you there. And I think Kyle Larson makes it back into the Final Four. And I think young Ryan Blaney makes it into the Final Four for the first time, so he'll be the Ford representative this year in the Final Four. And then I guess my last guy, I'm you know what? I'm going to go with Tyler Reddick. Let's see. I think he has the you need kind of a wild card guy to make it into the Final Four. I think last year that was Ross Chastain, with what he was able to do, even though they were up there, they weren't quite as strong as some of the other guys, but and the way he made it in. But I think that driver this season is going to be Tyler Reddick, and I think based on his talent and what we saw from the 45/23 at the end of the year, I think they have the ability to make it into the championship four. So I think it's going to be a pretty solid Final Four, and we'll like to see that pick happen. And you know what? Go with I'll go with Larson as the champ for this year. Go with that. So should be a pretty interesting Final Four. I think we both have some pretty good picks for both of us, and should be an interesting season.
Yeah, Larson. I mean, I thought about Larson there in terms of the whole Hendrick dynamic. I also was thinking about YRB because when is it going to happen? When is he going to go and take that next step? And I feel like Blaney also, after such a solid year points wise, he's like right there. Things are in place that he could make that next step. So those are, and then Reddick. I mean, thinking about that whole the main storyline or one of the main storylines in Cup this year, we both picked one half of that deal. Both believe Martin Truex Jr. So that's we'll see how that Truex kid from Mayetta, New Jersey does this year. That was the one that we both agreed on. So we'll see about that. Let's move over to Xfinity Series. So the defending champion has left, of course, moved up to Cup. The one of the top four last year also has moved up to the Cup Series. So there's the main thing is you think about Junior Motorsports. They bring back 3 of their 4 drivers, which of course they had 3 of the 4 cars in the Final Four. They get Buckshot Jones in the 9 car to replace Gregson. So that's going on there. A big piece that is a big change and addition to the series this year is Stewart-Haas will now become a 2-car organization in the Xfinity Series. They were partners with certain teams. Now there's been some changes with that, but Cole Custer goes back to the Xfinity Series, and he'll be working with Jonathan Toney. And so that's an intriguing prospect for sure. He looked like he was going to be, had a lot of potential. The way he raced in Xfinity the last 2 years he was in the Xfinity Series hasn't really panned out in the Cup Series, but because his dad is Gene Haas's best friend, he's going to get multiple opportunities to prove himself. But I do think the Xfinity car is much better for him. He did win at California, last year, driving for SS Greenlight. Mentioned Sam Mayer. He gets a new crew chief with Marty Lindley. Sheldon Creed, and who comes back to RCR along with Austin Hill. So Creed picked it up in the second half of the year, but had given up so many points early that he wasn't able to make the playoffs. I'm trying to go through some of these here. Blaine Perkins, he'll be taking over for Joe Graff at the 07 SS Greenlight car. JD Motorsports focusing on 2 cars, Bailey Curry, Brennan Poole. Justin Allgaier comes back, and now we'll have Jim Pullman instead of I'm forgetting who his crew chief was for all these years. He's had the same crew chief forever. I think he moved over into the he'll be staying home now, I guess is what it is. Crew chief Allgaier in 2030. Yeah, so JR Motorsports. Yeah, Jason Burdett. There you go. So Jason Burdett is going to move over to the 9 with Buckshot Jones, and Josh Berry will get Taylor Moyer, who was previously the crew chief of the 1 car, and Sam Mayer. So that'll be something to look at. The 08 will see Gray Galding make a return to full-time competition. So the SS Greenlight, a lot of changes, running 2 manufacturers there. The Colleague 10 car, which was uh, landing castle last year, but because of the Voyager company, I think, going under, now he will be in a limited schedule. That'll theoretically be the star car, and Kyle Busch, amongst others, will be driving that number 10. Hemrick comes back full time, and Jason Trinchier will stay as his crew chief. Some Argentinian guy is going to be driving for MBM. Gio Liberati. That's what do you call Rambo Liberati's brother, I would assume. Chandler Smith moves from the Truck Series from Kyle Busch Motorsports to take over AJ Allmendinger's 16, and Bruce Schickler will be his crew chief. The 18, Sammy Smith ran it a lot at the end of the year. Now he will be full-time in the number 18 with his sponsorship, the same sponsorship that Michael Annett used to have. And Jeff Mendering moves over from the 19 to the 18. Jason Ratcliffe moves over to the car that'll run for owners points, and they will have a mix of drivers: Ryan Truex, Joe Graff Jr., Connor Mozak, and Myatt Snyder. We'll see the Cup guys probably will drive that car as well. John Hunter Nemechek moves from the Truck Series as well to drive the number 20 for Joe Gibbs, and he'll have Ben Bayshore as his crew chief. Bayshore was I'm trying to think who he was a crew chief for last year.
Kyle Busch.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Good catch on that, Josh. Ben Bayshore, who has been in the Cup Series, now moves back to Xfinity. Will be working with John Hunter. There, no changes, major changes for Austin Hill. Sam Hunt Racing is doubling down, essentially. They'll have Kaz Gralla running full time. Then they have the 24, which will have multiple drivers. Connor Mozak's going to run 20 races. Parker Chase is going to run multiple races, both road racers. And Tyler Reddick will run some races as well in the number 24. A new team, number 25, AM Racing, which is what Austin Wayne Self and all Brett Moffitt, known imbecile, will get the opportunity there. I think they have Stuart Haas support. Joe Williams, who was his crew chief at Our Motorsports, moves to this program. Mentioned Gralla. Jeb Burton, after leaving Our Motorsports, will go to a second Jordan Anderson Racing. Jordan Anderson Racing Chevy. That can't be right. Is that for real that he's going to Steve Addington, Brad? Yeah, that is a misprint. Yeah, so Kyle Sieg is going to have Brad Parrott, not Buddy Parrott, as his crew chief. Probably going to wreck a lot of race cars. Parker Retzlaff will run full-time for Jordan Anderson Racing. Paperboy, I think he's like the second coming of, like, if Joey Logano was like young again, he'd probably be Parker Retzlaff. So that'll be interesting to see what happens with that. Yeah, that 34 is a waste. The 35 car is going to be a disaster because CJ McLaughlin is going to be driving for them. So that's going to be they're going to wreck. That's a caution every week when he drives. Natalie Decker is just going to drive around slow and be doing whatever TikToks. Though Brad Perez will get to drive that car this year, so hopefully that'll be good for him. Steve Addington gets back as a crew chief. He'll be working for the 38 RSS team, which will have Joe Graff Jr. run the majority of the races in that car. And then Sieg, of course, will get a new crew chief because Cowboy Starlin retired, and he'll run his number 39. Alpha Prime expands and makes a lot of changes. They're going to be running on number 43 with Ryan Ellis, with at least it says 15 races on that. Then it became at least 24. So assuming that, we'll just say 15 to 24 for Ryan Ellis. Jeffrey Earnhardt moves over there to run full time. The 45 becomes kind of the anybody else. Rajah Caruth is going to be in that car. Stephen Parsons and Sage Karam, Frankie Kerr. So that's a great combo there. Frankie Kerr is a great crew chief. Parker Kligerman will be driving for Big Machine Records, or if you ask Baba Booey, Big McKine Records. Patrick Donahue will be his crew chief. Jeremy Clements with Mark Setzer. They won Daytona last year. The Emerling Gase, I mentioned some of those drivers. Trying to go through. Ryan Vargas will be driving, the CHK team Chevy. So that's Gary Keller. And then you have Mike Harmon and I don't know who it's Mike Clayton Sr., CHK. So there you go. So he'll be driving that 74 car this year, trying to run it full time or at least run a bunch of races. Anthony Alfredo will be the lead driver for BJ McLeod and the 78. Okay, got the other thing. Josh Williams returns to DGM to drive the number 92 car. And, Herbst, no changes. He'll run the Daytona 500 for his Cup debut. Garrett Smithley will be running full time for BJ McLeod in the second car, the number 99. So, yeah, there's a lot of changes. I mean, two of the big drivers that were in the series are now in Cup. Another one loses his ride because of sponsorship. A person who made or just missed the playoffs or whatever in Castle is now out as well. But you look at it, Joe Gibbs Racing has two cars, which is what there's been for a while, solid. You have Stuart Haas now has two cars to lead the Ford Brigade, and then Chevrolet with both Colleague RCR, and of course JRM have a lot of potential, Josh. So who do you look at? I mean, went over a bunch of guys. I think it starts with JRM. Even with all the crew chief changes they got going on, I think that's where the discussion has to begin. And then we can look at the likes of Colleague. We'll look at the likes of RCR and Gibbs with two new drivers full time.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It does, start with JRM. I mean, I think, two of them are going to be in the Final Four, so I'll give the first half of what I think, in the Final Four, that Josh Berry and Justin Allgaier will both be in the Final Four again. I don't think Brandon Jones will be there, but I think he'll have a pretty solid year in the 9 car. I don't think he'll be able to, produce or, reproduce the talent that, or, the numbers that Noah Gragson put up. Sam Mayer, I think he's solid, but I think, overall the jury's still kind of out on him. I think he's still a little bit too raw, for what he was, the type of car that he's in. So I think he'll be a little bit more improved. Maybe he'll get a pick up a win, but I don't think he'll be quite on the same level as Barry or as Allgaier. So I definitely think, those 7 and 8 cars are two of the best cars in the series right now in the Xfinity. So you have that. And then also, going to the Toyotas, obviously, you've got John Hunter Nemechek, moving up to the number 20 car from the trucks. I think he's going to have a strong season running in that car. He's got support from Toyota now full time in the Xfinity series, and I think looks like they should be a pretty good car throughout the year. I think Ben Beshore, good crew chief, someone who's been with Kyle Busch, and so I think he'll be able to give John Hunter Nemechek pretty good cars. I think Sammy Smith in his attempts last year, his limited attempts, he did really well, and I think he's going to be a rookie that should be somebody that people look out for, in this season and in the future. I think he did a really good job driving for Gibbs last year. So that should be pretty interesting. Then also the other team to really focus in on, I think, is Richard Childress Racing, with Austin Hill and with Sheldon Creed. I think both those guys, they ran pretty well at times. They were both pretty inconsistent, but Austin Hill seems to have the super speedways and Atlanta super speedway figured out, and I think Sheldon Creed, after a year in as a rookie in the Xfinity Series, I think he's going to improve greatly. We saw what he was able to do in the Truck Series for many years, and now I think with his talent, I think he's going to be able to do a whole lot better this season in the number 2 car. So I think he actually makes the playoffs this time, and I think he maybe gets a win or two this season. So should be interesting for that team. I think they'll have a little bit more improvement overall as a team, compared to some of the other contenders and this series that's not as it doesn't have a whole lot of star power in it really when you consider things, but they do have a ton of drivers who are probably going to be in Cup within a few years. So it's definitely a lot of things to think about there. And then I'll look at Cole Custer. I think he, like you said earlier, I think he does a lot better in Xfinity than he did in the Cup Series. Go back to his win last year at Auto Club, and then you also go back to his first win back in Homestead all the way back in 2017. He dominated that event very, very thoroughly and was the winner in that race by like 10 seconds, or at least he had a 10-second lead at some point during that race, and it's pretty good for a driver with not a whole lot of experience at that time. So I think he'll be a lot better fit in this series, and I think Josh Berry, or not Josh Berry, but Cole Custer, I think be a lot more competitive, and Stuart Haas definitely help him in his future at Stuart Haas, if he stays in the Xfinity Series, or if they bring him back into the Cup Series, or or even if he jumps to another team to try to get back into Cup. I think that's something definitely to consider there. So got to look at those guys. Colleague as well, Chandler Smith, really good in trucks the last couple of years. Can he bring some of that to 16, replacing AJ Allmendinger? So should be interesting to watch him, how he runs in that series. He's got good teammates around him. Daniel Hemrick, solid champion teammate there, and then of course the 10 colleague car that's going to rotate around throughout the year. He's going to have Kyle Busch as somebody to lean on for experience. Allmendinger, Austin Dillon, Justin Haley, Landon Castle. So I think throughout the year he's going to have a lot of experience to lean on for support and help as he goes throughout his rookie season. So I think the Xfinity Series, we lost a little bit of the competitiveness after some of the drivers graduating onto the Cup Series, but at the same time, I think it should be a pretty interesting, and think the racing will definitely be as good as it was and as good as it's ever been in the Xfinity Series for sure.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, there's a lot of intrigue this year after a couple of those big dogs have left. You mentioned you said Josh Berry and what's it called, Justin Allgaier.
Yeah.
And then who else are you looking at for your Final Four?
So, I mean, looking in my Final Four, I said Berry, Allgaier, and I'm actually typing this out myself right now. And I'm going to put John Hunter Nemechek. I think he's done really good in the Truck Series, and I think in a Gibbs car, I think he's really good. So I'm going to put him in his in the final four, and then this one's a little bit tougher, but I'm gonna put it's tough, but I'm gonna put Sammy Smith. I think Sammy Smith is really good as a rookie, so it's gonna be a Junior Motorsports split, Gibbs split in the Xfinity Series, and I think that's kind of reflective of how it's been the last couple of years. So Sammy Smith as a rookie making it to the Final Four, I think it's been really impressive. And John Hunter Nemechek, Justin Allgaier, Josh Berry, Final Four this year in Xfinity. And champion, I'll go with Josh Berry as champion.
Well, that's interesting because that's who I'm picking to win the championship too. And bias, no bias, that's who I figure is the most likely. He's experienced. He's now got the understanding of these tracks. He's been in it for however many years. So, I mean, I think he goes and gets that championship for sure this year. So that's one. Looking at some of the other drivers, I'm going to say that, I mean, I also agree that John Hunter goes and gets into the Final Four. So he makes it. So that's one Chevy, one Toyota. I will go out and say Cold Custard makes the Final Four again, returning to the Xfinity Series. So right now I have full representation, one out of every manufacturer there. And then my fourth driver, let's see here. So I've already said, so Phil's Xfinity picks, Josh Berry, so Berry, JHN, Custer, and my wild card for the Final Four will be Sheldon Creed. After a tough year last year, he goes and makes the progress. He's done this his whole entire stock car career, really. After usually struggling the first year, the second year he takes a big step forward. He won the Truck Series championship in his second year. He won an ARCA championship that way. I think it goes in that same path for Xfinity for Sheldon Creed. But, of course, we both have picked and doubled down on Josh Berry. So hopefully Josh Berry comes through for us. It'd be a bummer if he doesn't. But that's who we think. Berry. No, that's not Berry. Berry has his Berry champ equals champ. So he learned from last year and the mistakes they made in that final race to go and get through and get old Junebug another title with one of his good buddies coming through after all those years of hard work. So that's Xfinity. Now let's move to the trucks. Now trucks is going to be really convoluted. There's still plenty of moving parts in this deal. The big pieces are Kyle Busch Motorsports reduces their team to essentially two trucks that are theoretically Kyle Busch Motorsports, but they have a connection to a third. They'll be running Chevys, of course. Kyle Busch will be running the Ford truck, which will be driven by Chase Purdy, who's definitely nowhere near as good as Brock Purdy. You'll have Nick Sanchez, the ARCA Series champion, with Rev Racing. They'll be connected, working together in that second full-time truck. And then Kyle Busch will be running limited races in his 51. You have the defending series champion, Zane Smith, who's essentially Ford's entire driver development program, returning to try to defend his Truck Series championship while running limited races in both Xfinity and Cup. You have ThorSport, which has returned to Ford again, and they'll run Haley Deegan and get Rich Lucius as the crew chief for her and the number 13. Then I'm trying to go and see here whatever the other drivers at ThorSport, what changes they have. Connor Jones, who's a young kid, will be running limited races. Ty Majeski will now run the number 98 instead of the 66. Matt Crafton, for the 157th year in a row, will be driving the Menards truck. It'll be a Ford with Shane Wilson. So those two are staying the same. The Ben Rhodes will have Jared Prince to be his crew chief. He's long time had Rich Lucius, so the former Truck Series champion will have a new crew chief this year. Then we go into some of these other drivers, and Jack Wood is going to run a good amount of races. I think about 10 races for Kyle Busch in that 51. So that'll be something to look at. GMS, of course, Legacy Motor Club that's Maury Gallagher's part of Maury Gallagher's deal, but GMS is expanded in the Truck Series to now 3 full-time trucks from 2. Jack Wood last year spent most of the year crashing and being terrible. He goes to Kyle Busch, and in comes Rajah Caruth, who finished in the top 5 in ARCA points. He'll have Chad Walter as his crew chief. No changes on the 23 Grant Enfinger. He'll have Jeff Hensley as his crew chief. And then the 43 will be Daniel Dye, moving up from ARCA. And so they'll have 3 full-time trucks in that in that camp. Nice Motorsports, Carson Hocevar, who Brett Griffin hates with a passion, will be back with Phil Gould and Worldwide Express as their full-time sponsor. Mike Hillman Jr. goes to the second truck, which will now be the number 41, and be run by a variety of drivers, including Ross Chastain and Travis Pastrana at Daytona, to be along with others. McAnally Hilgeman changes their driver lineup completely, and they had 1 full-time truck, now they have 2. Jake Garcia will be racing the majority of the races. Clyde will be driving at Daytona this week. Chad Norris is the crew chief. The 19 will see Christian Eckes, after being at Kyle Busch Motorsports and Toyota, will move over and run the 19 Napa Chevy, replacing Derek Kraus, who moves to Young's Motorsports, and they're looking for sponsorship with the possibility of running more races there. Other pieces is what's called Tricon Garage, essentially, which is Gil DGR Crosley, or whatever the hell they were called last year. I don't even remember. David Gilliland Racing, I think it was last year, right? Or I don't know.
Yeah, that was DGR Crossley last year.
Yeah, DGR Crossley. So, and then the Gray family, they are now Tricon Garage. You have, going through all these, so the number 1 will have a mix of drivers. William Sawalich, as I mentioned earlier, Jesse Love, 2 prospect drivers. They'll be driving the number 1, along with a list of other people. Dean Thompson, who was a waste of time at Nice, will now waste a seat at Tricon Garage. Corey Heim is their lead driver. moving into what will be the number 11. Then you have Tanner Gray sticking around for the number 15, and number 17 will run with Taylor Gray, who and with a majority of the races, it says Sammy Smith's going to run at Daytona. So looking at that, and of course Chad Johnson is still listed as a crew chief on the J-Ski site, but he's in Cup. And it lists Tricon Garage and Toyota, but Taylor Gray's sponsor is Ford. So that's funny. They got a lot of players there, a lot of different drivers to look at in that organization. But really, it's all about, I think, for them, I mean, moving to Toyota, of course, becoming the lead Toyota program and essentially a feeder system. It's about Corey Heim. What is he going to do this year after winning Rookie of the Year in the Truck Series last year for Kyle Busch? And then who else? God, it's a dumpster fire. Tyler Ankrum returns to Tory Racing, but will have Doug Randolph as his crew chief, longtime Cup crew chief. Scott Zipadelli left the organization after 6 years. I don't know where he went. I don't remember hearing anything, to be fair. Nobody cared. Yeah, Ryan Vargas will run part-time for the On Point Motorsports Toyota team, number 30. Stephen Lane, the crew chief. Brett Holmes will be running full-time, the former ARCA Series champion, running for Rookie of the Year, and he gets Jerry Baxter, who's won plenty of races and multiple series, so that's a big get for him. And I think that's about it. No real changes elsewhere, major changes, some manufacturer things, but when you get into it, the manufacturer doesn't really matter. It's just the body style because the engine's the same. So I'll start off with my picks for the Final Four, and then I'll let you, Josh, kind of get into what you're looking at for the Truck Series season this year and your picks. I'm going to say Ty Majeski makes the Final Four again. He did last year, and he was making progress, and he did wreck in the final race, but I do think he's likely to go and make it again. I'll also say Zane Smith will get yet another opportunity in the Final Four. Every year he's been in the Truck Series, he's made the Final Four, so likely as last year in the series, he'll make it to have a chance to defend his title. After that, we have to include a Chevy of some sort. There's so many of them. And that's the interesting one. Who do I pick? I want to go with that one, but I think it's kind of risky. I'll just go safe. I'll go Grant Enfinger as the third pick for me, and then my fourth choice will be Corey Heim. So 1 Toyota, 1 Chevy, 2 Fords. And I will say that Zane Smith will repeat as the Truck Series champion and move forward to whatever he's going to be doing, whether it's Cup for Stuart Haas or Cup for Roush or Cup for Front Row or whoever, or go to the Xfinity Series or wherever it's going to be. I think Zane Smith will defend his Truck Series championship. So I'll add those in while you give us your thoughts, Josh, on the 2023 Truck Series season.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a interesting year in the Truck Series. Obviously, one contender from previous years, Kyle Busch Motorsports, kind of going through a change of scenery now. They got completely facelift with, of course, Kyle Busch going over to RCR Racing, so they're switching over to Chevy. You got 2 new drivers. It's going to be a interesting year for that team. I think they're going to go through a lot of kind of growing pains as they sort of rebuild transition over from Toyota and TRD support over to Chevy, but they still have opportunities for Kyle Busch to go out and win races. But so I mean, I'd still pick him in any race that he tries to enter in. But should be interesting there. Of course, you got all the other teams, the regulars throughout the field. You've got like you mentioned, Zane Smith, Christian Eckes, changing to McNally Racing. You've got Derek Kraus going to Young's Motorsports. Grant Enfinger, always a steady driver. Roger Carruth being a rookie this year. De Benedetto still racing in the Truck Series. Ryan Vargas is going to do a couple of races here and there, in Xfinity and in the trucks. Nice Motorsports. You've got both Chastain brothers driving for the 41 at different points of the season. Travis Pastrana is going to be in the car for a bit. Carson Hocevar, he had an interesting year last year. Can he be better? Improve upon what he did last year in that car. Stuart Friesen, of course, always a solid guy in this series. Matt Crafton, forever going to be the mainstay veteran in this series until he decides to hang it up. Ty Majeski, Ben Rhodes, of course, those guys are always going to be reliable. So, you got a pretty reliable set of drivers once you kind of look through the field. In terms of, competitive drivers, there's not too many, but, you have a solid amount that I think could make the playoffs. So, it's going to be a, interesting year, I think, especially we have a lot of change in some of these teams, and of course, KBM's changing over, different manufacturer, different, support and everything. So, there might be some differences there, and obviously, I don't think their drivers outside of Kyle Busch are as talented as they were before. So, I think maybe a little bit different in some ways, but I think my final four for this series, I think I'm going to put Ben Rhodes making in the final four. I think he's just always going to make the final four. I'm going to put Carson Hocevar. I think I liked what he saw out of him last year, and I think he can convert a lot of those second place finishes, top fives that he got. I think he can convert at least a couple of those into wins. So I think he's probably good for at least 2 wins, I think, in this series. I'm gonna put let's see, got those two. I'm put Ty Majeski, so I'll agree with you. Ty Majeski making it into the final four. And then also, I'll put I'll agree with you saying that Zane Smith goes into the final four as well. So pretty similar there. I think I think the Truck Series is a little bit more not going to say predictable, but certainly it's easier to pick the names out of a hat for the championship than maybe in the Cup Series for sure, or in the Xfinity Series. But I think some good names, names that have been there before, plus newer guy in Hocevar. I think people are going to see. I think he's going to kind of have that same career arc Ross Chastain has had in a way, and kind of the year Chastain had last year in the Cup Series. I think that'll be what Hocevar has this season. So look out for him on the racetrack, later on this year. And then, of course the champion, right? It's tough, but I'm gonna go with Ben Rhodes. So you had Zane Smith repeating, and I'll bookend Zane Smith's first title with 2 Ben Rhodes titles and another post-race media center drink off with Bud Light and him getting trashed on that.
Schlitz or whatever cheap beer that they have offered, it doesn't really matter. It's Ben Rhodes. You could literally, whatever. He's pretty soft on that one, but you pick 2 guys to get a second championship. In my case, I picked Kevin Harvick to become a 2-time champion and Zane Smith to become a repeat champion. So we will see how those picks come off, and we have them saved, so it's all out there. News in the world of IndyCar and Formula One. There's been testing today at Sebring for IndyCar. Roman Grosjean and Kyle Kirkwood end up 1-2. Callum Ilott is the fastest Chevy runner. There's only the Juncos Hollander team and Ed Carpenter, while Will Power is running the hybrid unit. So he was learned the Power 2 done continue hybrid testing on Tuesday. So he didn't really get any major. There was mechanical issues outside of the hybrid unit, supposedly based on David Malsher and motorsport.com. Marcus Armstrong, who had been testing for Chip Ganassi. Of course, he'll be running this year on the road courses. Was fourth. DeFrancesco, fifth. So 3 Andretti Autosport cars there. Colton Herta was the slowest of the 4. Interesting. The sandwich in between the Ed Carpenter cars of Daly and VK. Daly's have got a busy week. He'll be testing today is Monday, then he'll be testing on Tuesday, and Wednesday night he will be jumping in a Cup Series car trying to qualify for the Daytona 500. He's already put it out there on his own podcast. He doesn't think that they're going to have enough speed, and he's going to have to essentially pull a Hail Mary in the duels to get into the 500. But that car last year did get into the 500 Kaz Gralla. So, possibility there. So IndyCar, they got that test going on, and which we're racing all road and street cars. Yeah, so Nick Cassidy is gonna jump in the car, one of the Ganassi cars. So that'll be interesting to see. Cassidy is a former Super Formula champion, and he's been running in Formula E the last few years. He's run in DTM, World Endurance Championship, Ferrari. DTM was with AF Corsa. So, and also the DTM was with Red Bull, and then AF Corsa ran him in GTs, but so that's also a thing. There's a lot of intrigue with Ganassi, of course, because the number 10 car is going to be open next year or after this year, because Palou likely moves to the McLaren team. So that'll be something to look at. And Armstrong is there. They're looking at other Formula 2 guys. So that'll be something. We'll go and look at that. So that's IndyCar news for now. Essentially, Callum Ilott out saying that they should be able to get a podium. I don't know if we mentioned, Catherine Legg got announced last week to make a IndyCar return with Rahal Letterman Lanigan. So that's good to see for her. She's got commitments to Honda. Of course, she's working. Her and Sheena Monk are running the Acura in GTD. I'll go through some of these other ones. Verizon, Penske, multi-year extension. Not shocking. Canon. So, that's basically the news for IndyCar and Formula One. Josh, we can get back in. A lot of the previews or reveals for AlphaTauri last week. You had Haas go and run in the car. McLaren today. You had Williams did a shakedown of their FW45. Uh, Alfa Romeo showed their car a few days ago. Aston Martin showed their car today. When you look at it, most of these teams kind of have a lot of similarities. There's not really much deviation. We'll see what Mercedes brings to the table here in a couple of days. But did you see anything in terms of any of those reveals that stood out to you?
I mean, just looking at these in general, I think not really. I mean, I think you're right that they all kind of look the same for the most part. I mean, I haven't really seen too much that would suggest otherwise. But I mean, I guess from a livery standpoint, paint scheme. I mean, it looks like for the most part. They're all kind of the same color scheme. Looks like AlphaTauri doing something a little bit different with their color scheme compared to the previous years, a little bit more red than what they had in the past couple of years. McLaren, of course, continuing to add more sponsors and more sponsors compared to what they've had in the past, and I think sponsors covering more on the car than the orange. The other teams, Aston Martin. Funny how Alonso was calling Lance Stroll a championship driver, and then he also says that Aston Martin will be in the title hunt, but not this year, which is I think just him trying to pump up the team and not necessarily the reality of that team. They're not really a title contender, I think, in Formula One. It would be very hard to see them be a title contender as they are right now. But McLaren, of course, looks like they're expecting a huge improvement from what they were last year and in previous years, and looks like they're trying to crack the top four in Formula One. Kind of they've been in the midfield and kind of in that sandwich of midfield cars and the 5th, 6th, 7th place of F1 teams, and they're trying to be better and get into that top four. We'll see if Lando Norris can get a win this year. But I mean, other than that, technically, I mean, I haven't really been able to see too much there, but we'll see how some of these other reveals come out. We haven't seen Ferrari yet, and we haven't seen Mercedes yet, so I think I'll have a better idea of what these cars are going to look like and what they're going to do as a series. Once those teams make their reveals, later on.
Froze there. I don't know if it's on my end or you're freezing, but you're definitely frozen there. Your picture is, at least.
I'm good. I mean, well, my camera is good, but you froze for a second. So
it kind of happened earlier. Yeah, so we'll move on. In terms of the GSP roundup, we'll go and move on and get into Formula E. So we've got Formula E was in India this past weekend and saw John-Eric Verne go and win for the DS Penske organization. So that'll be that was a good performance after what has been a struggle so far this year or this season for the DS Penske team in Hyderabad. Track layup, but unimpressed by facilities. What a shocker, being in India. And I say that as somebody whose family's from there. The podium the results saw Jean-Eric Vergne win by 0.4 of a second over Nick Cassidy. Antonio Felix da Costa finished fourth. Sergio Sete Camara for Neo, not Neo the singer. They finished fifth. Might be their best finish in a long time. It's been a long time for them. They struggled. Oliver Rowland saves the Mahindra deal for the home team. One of the home teams gets a sixth place finish. Norman Nato, seventh for Nissan, defending world champion Stoffel Van Dorn, eighth. Andre Lauderer, ninth for Andretti Autosport, and then Maserati's Eduardo Mortara rounds out the top 10. The McLaren team, Rene Rast and Jake Hughes had issues. Sam Bird and Mitch Evans. Sam Bird got into it with Mitch Evans, and they took each other out while they were up front. So the Jaguar team is sponsored by TCS, so that's another Indian sponsor. And of course, Jaguar is Indian owned brand now. Dick Tantrum fell out, and Kelvin van der Linde was also out of the race. Yeah, Mitch Evans led the first 6 laps, and Buemi and Vergne swapped the lead a little bit until Vergne took it over and basically led the second half of the E-Prix. So that's the fastest lap, and Nico Muller looks like, Nico Muller had the fastest lap. Interesting. Nico Muller finished 11th in the race. So there is that. Trying to look for the points there, but they don't have it. We'll just go to Formula E points. They'll be going, the next race will be in South Africa. So that'll, or not South Africa, I might be going and getting myself screwed up here with one of their, it is South Africa. Okay, good. So in a couple of weeks' time, they'll be in South Africa, then a month break till Brazil and Sao Paulo, and then another month between that race and the Berlin doubleheader. And things start to kind of pick up after that for Formula E. The points so far right now sees Pascal Wehrlein leading by 18 points over Jake Dennis, who didn't score any points on Saturday. So he won the first race and got fastest lap. Wehrlein has won 2 races this year. Jean-Eric Vergne, after only having 6 points so far through 3 races, has now vaulted up to third, tied with Sebastian Buemi, who's I don't know what that is. So tied with 31. So they're 49 points behind Wehrlein at the moment. So it's pretty much, after Dennis and Wehrlein are in their own kind of world, and then you have a lot of these drivers essentially from Jean-Eric Vergne till Antonio Felix da Costa is only 10 points. And then you have Luca de Grassi for Mahindra, who only scored at the first race of the season in Mexico. He has 18 points. He's in 10th. So interesting look there. The teams, the Porsche, Tag Heuer Porsche team is 23 points ahead of Avalanche Andretti. So they're the Porsche customer. Oh, that's an interesting dynamic there. Envision, who's the Jaguar customer team, is in third. Neo McLaren, which runs Nissan's power unit, is ahead of the Nissan factory team. Jaguar TCS crashed themselves out of a big haul of points. DS Penske in 6th. double points haul there. Mahindra 7th, Neo 333 8th, Nissan, Maserati, and then the new Apt Cupra team that is running with Mahindra power units. They haven't scored a point yet so far in the Formula E Championship in 2022-23. Move to the World Rally Championship to see former world champion, 2019 world champion Otanek win for M Sport Ford, the first win for the Ford and program for M Sport since Sebastian Vettel. Of course, there's so many Sebastians that win. Sebastian Loeb going and winning Rally Monte Carlo last year over Sebastian Ogier, who won Rally Monte Carlo this year. Otanek goes and wins that race. It'll be a month between now and their next race for Rally Mexico. It's got basically a month between races here and there as it stands. So Tanek gets the victory and finishes, and Craig Breen finishes second for Hyundai, Thierry Neuville third, Cali Rovanpera, defending world champion fourth. Elfyn Evans had a chance. He had a chance to go and win this. Breen also. Evans finishes fifth. So 2 Hyundais, 2 Toyotas. The second Ford of Pierre-Louis Loubet finished sixth. So that's, and the top Rally 2 cars, Oliver Solberg, finished eighth overall. So that's the standings right now. Tanek early in the season leads by 3 points over Cali Rovanpera, 9 over Thierry Neuville, and 12 on Elfyn Evans. So that's that's that. I mean, Lappy ran both races so far. He's 14 points out of fourth. We had MotoGP testing over this past week. We got some supercars testing going on with their new Gen 3 cars, which is a new Camaro and the Mustang. Looking at that, seeing what they can do or what they're going to have going on. MotoGP first preseason test saw a lot of Ducati power and speed. Yamaha having a new power, new engine, and it being an improvement, helping with top or straight line speed for Fabio Quartararo, but having issues in terms of qualifying. Ducati. So Ducati is definitely in a good position. The leaders are good except for these, which Alex Marquez. So that's something. Either we do something or Ducati can finish in top 6 in the championship. Alicia Spargaro, Yamaha, particular good vibe. So certain issues with the bike, but Fabio Quartararo might be able to extract the most out of that. And even Franco Morbidelli showing a little more speed, but it'll be interesting. I think the fact that they're going to have sprint races every race will help the Yamaha program more than other factories. Honda's got struggled. They're on the struggle bus, and Marc Marquez, even though he's as healthy as he's been in a few years, they're gonna have a hard time. And Aprilia looks like they're in a good position with their factory organization, with Alicia Spargaro, who of course finished third last year in points. and Maverick Vinales looking very motivated. KTM having struggles even with some of the adjustments. Now they have Brad Binder and Jack Miller together, but they're not showing a lot of speed right now. So that'll be something to look at as we go forward for in the second test and what they're able to do, what some of these manufacturers are able to do. And yep, so we'll move on from that. Speedweeks, let's go into that, Josh. We made our overall season picks, but we'll get into the Daytona 250 Truck Series race. What is it? Next Era Energy 250, whatever. 2 Jason Whites. Parker Kligerman will be running this race. What is it? They don't. Johnny Sauter's driving for that G2G team. So there's 42 trucks, or 42 for 36 spots. I don't know who the open. I figure Parker Kligerman, Clay Greenfield, Todd Peck, Cody Robar. It's at least 4 of them right there. In terms of the non-points or the limited schedule people. So that's for Tyler Ankrum. That's a good job on the entry list. Johnny Sauter, that's another one. I think he can fall back on a past champion provisional or something like that. I don't know if that's still a thing. But there's possibilities there. The questionable, Rayum Brothers had that big fire, so we'll see what can happen, what they'll be able to do. Brett Holmes, I think, probably bought points from somebody else. Brian Doza, the FDNY team, that somebody has to qualify on speed, make the top 32. And then there's Joshua Rayum instead of Josh Rayum. He'll be driving the 22 for AM Racing. So, and I'm not sure how many of the Tricon vehicles have points or not. Bill Wilburn is his crew chief for Sammy Smith. So that's interesting. Some names I haven't seen in a long time. Brad Means is a crew chief for Spencer Boyd. That's pretty cool. Scott Zipadelli. Okay, so there you go. There's my answer. Scott Zipadelli moved to Tricon Garage. So he'll be working with Corey Heim. Kind of makes my pick for him look even better. Corey LaJoy is going to try to make it with the Spire Motorsports team with Bono as his crew chief. And let's see, Danny Stockman is a crew chief for Nick Sanchez. Stockman's won the Truck Series and Xfinity Series championship there. So in terms of, I'll go first because, of course, the algorithms had to sit on ice for a while. Zane Smith won this race last year. Ben Rhodes has won this race. It's basically a crapshoot. Corey LaJoy has to qualify on speed, or else he's probably going home, which I have a hard time believing they will, because that truck, every time they came out last year, was really fast. Usually in these truck races, random stuff happens. Trying to look at this and look at this field. I know that for Matt Crafton, for years he's driven Daytona and he's been looking for that Daytona win, but I don't think it's in the cards this year. Joe Shears won this race many times with Johnny Sauter, but I don't see Ty Majeski doing it. I mean, I it's so random, this freaking race. And I mean, Clyde is in this race, so there's a strong possibility there. It'll get that Hendrick engine. Um, I really don't know. This is just crazy who to pick. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna go with Brett Holmes. It's because he has Baxter as his crew chief. There's Chevy. There's a lot of Chevys to draft with. I think Brett Holmes wins. He has experience in ARCA, running there, and he's won that championship. Random winners have been the case at Daytona, at least sometimes in recent years, like John King and others. I think my wild card selection, I mean, that's essentially a wild card as it is. But the wild card pick for me to do something of value, I kind of hedged with Corey LaJoy. I probably really wanted to pick, I kind of wanted to pick Corey LaJoy, to be fair. So I'll just reverse it and I'll say he's a wild card. So I'm picking Brett Holmes to win, Corey LaJoy as a wild card, kind of stretching it a little bit, but still, in the grand scheme, they're not a full-time operation in the truck series. Josh, who are you looking at for the truck series to win and wild card and whatever? What's the algorithm speaking to?
Yeah, I mean,
The Tate Fogelman algorithm, since that the algorithm
it might apply here.
chose Tate Fogelman a couple of years ago.
Yeah, of course. I mean, my personal opinion first. I mean, I think for me personally, I'm gonna go with Chase Elliott winning the Truck Series race on Friday night. I think it's an easy pick there, and he's really good in the Truck Series, or at least restrictor plate racing in general. I think a wild card. I think a wild card pick here in this series is Travis Pastrana. He's in the 41 this weekend. Travis preparing for the Daytona 500. A couple of years ago, or well, not a couple of years ago, more like a decade ago. He was going out in the Xfinity Series, or back when it was the Nationwide Series, and made his NASCAR debut in the 60 car and had a fairly solid debut there, and missed a bunch of wrecks late in the going, so until the last lap crash there, but in that race, but he had a solid debut in NASCAR back then, so yeah, why not pick him as a wild card for this weekend in the Truck Series on Friday night. So you have that, and then the algorithm, the Tate Fogelman algorithm, making the comeback here, or the return here on the GSP. So go ahead and make that pick here in the Truck Series right now, and it picks the 45. So number Lawless Allen. There you go, Lawless Allen. That's a Daytona winner right there.
Yeah, and he has one of the greatest names in the history of man. Yeah, I know you said Travis Pastrana, so now you're kind of doubling down with Nice Motorsports guys, but who did you say as your official winner again?
My official winner is Chase Elliott.
Okay, so Clyde. So here we go. So we'll go and put that in there. The picks, William Clyde Elliott, 2 to win. Pastrana as a wild card, and then algorithm, and then wild card algorithm pick is Lawless Allen. So a lot of Nice Motorsports there. So interesting to see how that'll all work out. And we'll see if we were anywhere near it. A lot of Chevys we're picking here. 3 Chevys on your end, and then in my side, I picked 2 Chevys. So a Ford or Toyota is going to win, probably after all of that. The Xfinity Series, I'll let you go first, Josh, in regards to that. I'm not even going to say that freaking stupid name. The Daytona 300, 6 cars are going to fail to qualify. They got 44 for 38 spots. Trying to look at some of these people here, if they have any errors on this entry list like they did on the Truck Series one. Well, at least we know there's a couple of guys that are going to cause cautions here. You have Blaine Perkins, who's kind of mediocre. Jade Buford is going to be driving in a second big McKine Records trucks or car, so that'll be something. David Starr, who's just a running caution himself. He got Awuji and CJ McLaughlin, so those 2 guys, and Kyle Sieg isn't in the Kyle Sieg isn't in this race. Interesting. Ryan Sieg is going to have to qualify on time because he put Joe Graff Jr. in the 39. That's cute. Kyle Sieg is in the race. Okay, so there's another one that's going to cause a caution. That's lovely. So, Josh, you can go first. Let us know. Who do you think on your end for winner, wild card, and what does Tate Fogleman say?
Yeah, I like how we're referring to the AI as a real person now, so I like it. No, for my pick in this series, I think I'm just gonna go chalk here and go with Justin Allgaier, the number 7, winning at Daytona here this weekend in the Xfinity Series.
Would be his first win at Daytona.
It would be his first win, but I think chalk as in he's always up there in Xfinity, and kind of fading the colleague party that always happens here at Daytona, but at the same time I feel like colleague's a little bit different this year. So they've got Haley, who's won there before. Hemrick, of course, hasn't won in colleague cars yet, and then Chandler Smith, rookie in the series, so it's a little bit different than what they've had in years past there. So that's kind of why I'm favoring Junior Motorsports this time around here in this series. Wild card, looking at this, it's like not enough of drivers here in this series to really say it's a wild card. Who's not.
There are a lot of wild cards.
There are a lot of wild cards, but they're all like a bunch of also rans as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. But yeah, it's hard. Let's go with. This is tough. You know what? Gray Gaulding. Why not? Gray Gaulding.
Almost won the July race a couple of years ago in that car, so that's not he retaliated. One of them, Daytona or Talladega, he almost won, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. Bobby Dotter is known for building good cars for the super speedways, so that isn't really as out there. And I mean, he's a perfectly all right drafter. He's gotten calmer in his older age, so if he can get the car to the finish, who's to say that he couldn't do it? Gaulding wild card, and then I wish I had a drum roll for this.
You want it? I don't know if the audio is going to pick this up, but
not. Well, I mean, the interesting thing was during your picks, for some reason, the sound went out, along with all the freezing and all the other stuff that's been going on today.
Yeah.
But so at least I don't know if you're going to get a drop there, but
Whatever. It picked. So I mean, while that happened, the algorithm picked cold custard to win. So it got smart.
well, there you go. I was talking about how Ryan Priest kind of proved Tony Stewart and Kevin Harvick right. Well, then Cole Custer, while the key kettle's going off here on the side, maybe want to turn that off. Cold Custard goes and gets the algorithm pick, so that's not as that's pretty good. I mean, it's usually more fun. I mean, the Lawless Allen one really fits the mold of the Tate Fogelman algorithm. You know, I'm doing a podcast here. But Mom, I'm done with my segment. Wearing the great John Clayton, going and wearing that Slayer shirt. So we'll go with put that in there because it just keeps on going off. I mean, so algorithm pick is Cold Custard. All right. So now my picks for this great race. I mean, going junior motorsports is definitely a safe call. I mean, I kind of want to do it, but I'm like, got to be a little different, make it a little more, add a little flavor here. I'm picking Parker Kligerman to win this race in his first race for Big Machine Records. He is proven to be very good at super speedway racing in a truck, and he's won multiple truck races there. So, Kligerman to win, and that's a I believe an RCR car as well. So it's not like it's a bad piece. They've had speed at the speedways over time. Jade Buford was able to qualify that car up front. So, put a veteran driver in that car. Why not? And gives himself a lot of momentum towards a possibility of contending for a championship. My wild card pick, I mean, you could just go and pull any number out, and that would be the I mean, it's interesting how they're literally right together. I'll take the guy who won in July or last August, and they try to cancel him and take the win away, and then they gave it back to him. Jeremy Clements, because it is Jeremy Clements. To be fair, they're a small team, and they really only have a couple of cars, and they're patchwork sponsorship. That would be a huge one for the championship if Jeremy Clements can start the year with a victory. They probably would be partying for so long they might miss the next race if that actually came off. So those are my two choices here. We'll just go and add that in. Kligerman to win, and what do you call Clements wild card. So now the fun one, the Great American Race, the Daytona 500. I know who I want to pick based on my fandom, but I've been talking about this since I was talking about it with my mom and other people. I'm like, there's only two things in like sport that have had really long dry spells in terms of wins and championships. One, of course, is football, which is brutal for me because that's my favorite sport. And the second one is the Daytona 500. My favorite driver, the last time my favorite driver won the Daytona 500 was when I was 7. And I'm 38 now. Unless, maybe it comes off on Sunday. But Davey Allison winning in 1992, the year before that, Ernie Irvan winning for Morgan McClure Racing. So those were the 2 times the Daytona 500 came off there. And I'll get in the entry list. I also put in who wins the front row and who misses the show. So there's actually a few pieces there we have to get into. The person that I pick to win the Daytona 500, and I would have never said this, it seems like I'm becoming a mark for this guy, but I'm definitely not. There's just something about it. I don't know what it is. Maybe he's gonna have a gun in his holster and he's gonna forget it's in his car. But Kyle Busch is gonna get over the hump, do the whole Dale Earnhardt 20 years of trying, 20 years of frustration crap, or however many years the bastard's been in the season, 19 years in the Cup Series, whatever, and he finally wins the Daytona 500. Kyle Busch in RCR 8 car, the 3-Chai Chevy. The wild card, and I'm going to speak it as it's, I've been stretching the wild card because at the end of the day, I don't have the algorithms. I have to go and I'm taking liberties. At the end of the day, it's our show. We can do whatever the hell we want. I'm going to go my wild card pick, and I mentioned this earlier in the show, one Darrell Wallace Jr. It's not really that wild once you get into the stats, but it is super speedway racing. And when you consider his owner as a 3-time Daytona 500 champion, and Toyotas are quite outnumbered, that is a piece there. But if Darrell Wallace Jr. has a chance, he did lead 2 weeks ago at the Clash, and I'm going to double down on that one too. Married Bubba Wallace seems to be even happier Bubba Wallace, and they seem to be in a good state of mind. A lot of good things. Pit crew seems to be in a good place. Darrell Wallace Jr. is my wild card for the Daytona 500. Finished second in this race, of course, last year. So, so those are my picks for Daytona. So let me go into do that. So Phil's Daytona 500 picks. Kai Busch to win. Bubba wild card. Now the other pieces are who's going to get the front row and who misses the show. Well, the front row, I feel like an open car is going to be on the front row.
Really?
I just have a weird feeling that a open car is going to be on the front row. What I'm going to go with this. There's going to be a little bit of symmetry with it. Alex Bowman gets the pole with Blake Harris in his first race as the crew chief with the 48 and the Ally Chevy. And the guy who will start on the outside of the front row is the guy that used to drive the 48 car for many years, the 2-time Daytona 500 winner. His name is Jimmy Johnson. In his first race back in a Cup car with the Legacy Motor Club Incorporated, what do they call? Works Limited. It's kind of like the Washington General Commander Redskins. That's what Legacy Motor Club is going to be for me. this year. I'm saying Alex Bowman and Jimmy Johnson are the front row. So Bowman and Johnson front row. And then the two cars that will go home from this race on Thursday night after the duels. This one is actually going to be somewhat. There is a little bit of difficulty with this one, actually.
It's a pretty tight field.
It is a really tight field. You're right about that, Josh. I mean, the open cars is probably the best open car combination list here in this whole since this what do you call charter system has come along. Now, just to remind everybody, as long as you've held on this long, the drivers that are open for this race are Chandler Smith, who's running the 13 for Colleague, Zane Smith, who's driving number 36 for front row, Connor Daly for Mayweather, Austin Hill for the Beard team, Travis Pastrana driving for 2311, and the aforementioned 7-time Jimmy Johnson. I already took him out of there because he's going to be on the front row. Now, two cars will get in on speed automatically on Wednesday during the qualifying. I've already said one of them is going to be on the front row, which is extreme, but whatever. Let's have some fun. The two cars that are going to go home. I mean, it hurts me to say this. It really does, because I'm a fan of both of these drivers, but Connor Daly and Travis Pastrana go home from the Daytona 500 because they both get involved in wrecks, and that takes them out of the running. I mean, Travis is, God love him, he's a modern day Evel Knievel, but I think even for him, this is asking a lot. I know that I literally picked one of his teammates to be the wild card to win this race. Tyler Reddick is somebody you have to look at in this race, but you haven't driven a Cup car, you haven't run a Gen 7 car, you have no practice, you have one lap of qualifying, and you're going to go out and run in the draft. I mean, that's just insane. The 50 car is not fast by any real metric. Maybe it drafts well, but can Connor Daly figure it out and make the moves he needs to? That's my concern. So I'm going Pastrana and Daly out. I would like to be wrong. I definitely want to be wrong. But not at the expense of like Jimmy Johnson going home. That would be pretty ugly. It would be as ugly as most of his IndyCar career. But you know, that's what it's gonna be. That's who I think. I kind of want to be wrong, and maybe like, you know, Austin Hill and one of them Smiths missed the show, but we'll see what happens with that. Josh, let us know what Tate Fogelman is saying. Let's see what the Daytona 500 is going to look like on all three of those aspects.
Yeah, well, I'm going to start off with the reverse order. So I'll start off with who I think is going to get eliminated. Or actually, let me start off with the pole winners first, because that comes first before the duel and the elimination and all that stuff. But I will agree with you that Alex Bowman wins the pole. The 48/88 car has basically been on the pole on the front row since 2016, going all the way back to Dale Jr. and Amelia in that car. So That's about almost a given there. I mean, if you bet on that, that's got to be like the surest bet in the entire world to do that. Um, of course, bet wisely on that if you do, and everything. And then the other car that will be on the front row of the Daytona 500. It's tough, but I'm gonna go with the um, Toyota here. I think they have speed. This speed weeks here on the super speedways, but yeah, I'm gonna go with Denny Hamlin on the front row with Alex Bowman. So a hack and the FedEx guy. So that's what I'm thinking. And on the front row there, as far as who gets eliminated, I agree with you. With Connor Daly getting eliminated. This is only based on speed. I think last year, the 50, well, first of all, things got strung out last year, and I'm wondering if that's going to happen again. And the 50 was one of the slower teams, and I think they ended up finishing a lap down to the leaders. When they tried to make it into the Daytona 500, they barely made it in. But I think this year it's going to be a little bit tighter, and I think compared to the rest of the team, I think the money team, for even with Connor Daly, who is a really good racer, I think in the Indy cars he's definitely proved himself on the super speedway, on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but just I don't think that even with Tony Uri Jr. on the box, I think they're just not going to have enough speed to make it in on the show, and think they're going to be struggling on Thursday night to make it in. So there's my thesis there on the first elimination, and then the other one, I'm going to go with Zane Smith getting eliminated from the duels. I think, of course, Jimmy Johnson, I think he makes it in. I think Travis Pastrana, I know you said he's going to get eliminated. He does have the least amount of experience, but at the same time, my thinking there is that he's also in a 2311 car, and they're going to give him as much help as he can to make it into the 500. So I think, he's going to end up running fairly good enough to be able to make it into the race. So, I think Zane Smith also, I think, and obviously Ford, they have, very, very high amount of focus into the super speedway program as well, but I just think they're just going to end up being on the short end of the stick. I think in terms of speed, I think they may be lacking a little bit, even with being a Ford car and everything like that. So that's my thinking there. And then for the race itself, I will go on the other end. I will say, I'm going to say that Ryan Blaney wins the Daytona 500. He's been up there in the past before. Just hasn't quite closed the deal. Last year had a shot at Austin Cindric's bumper and he got the block. 2020 was right there with Ryan Newman before the big crash happened, and barely got edged by Denny Hamlin that year. So, and 2018 he was in the lead for a good portion of that race before he got crashed late in the going there. So that's what I'm thinking for the winner. Wild card. It's hard, like you said earlier, it's hard to say who's actually a wild card these days in the Cup Series. But you know what? I'm going to go with the algorithm pick from last year that made you throw up and pick Noah Gragson to go and be the wild card pick. Seen him race at Daytona last year in the 62. Why not do it again for Jimmy Johnson in the Legacy Motor Club as a wild card? So there's my thinking there. And then, of course, the almighty algorithm pick. We'll go ahead and put it in here in a second. And it picks Corey LaJoie to go out and win the Daytona 500. So, and it's actually could happen. Corey LaJoie, I think, he's a good super speedway racer, and of course, had a chance. He was at Atlanta, but he was up front there at Atlanta back in the fall. So could happen, and why not on a super speedway? He's a perfect guy that could be the algorithm pick. I think fits for the algorithm pick for sure.
I'll tell you what, we were talking about parties. If Corey LaJoie and Spire win. They've only won one race in their existence. That was Justin Haley rain out a few years ago in the Coke Zero 400. And big deal for that organization. If Corey LaJoie wins that race, I have a hard time believing he will make it to wherever the hell their next race is. I have to check what the schedule is for the Cup Series. I forget what the schedule is. I have to see. Yeah. So it's Auto Club. They're probably going to have to bring him on a helicopter or in a private plane. He's going to be like mummified. I think it'll be like the, what was the movie where the dude got lost on the top of the roof of the hotel? It was Wedding, not the wedding. It was the buddy comedy, the one with it was Zach Galifianakis being the weirdo, and then you had
The Hangover. The Hangover.
Yeah, The Hangover. Yeah, so I feel like he's gonna be the guy left on the top of the roof. Skip Flores is gonna be Phil, just a cool dude trying to go and pull it off. Considering that Jonathan, whatever that, or the guy that used to be on the the Glass Case of Emotion is part of the Stacking Pennies podcast, so he can be the Galifianakis. And then I think Jonathan Merriman is in there too, who's another kind of toolish character, so he could be an Ed Helms character in that. So I feel like if that comes off, I'd sign for that personally. I think Corey LaJoie would be crying from his dad would be there. It could be a big celebration. It would turn the whole entire series on its head because Spire gets a spot in the playoffs. And that would be something. I kind of want to. It was kind of what I was hoping for a few years ago with Brendan gone to go and hit that big number, but we will see. Put it in accurately in our picks. Tate picks Corey LaJoie. So that would be the headline. 2 out of 3 definite crazy ones. We'll see what happens. It's Daytona, so we'll be back next week and we'll go over all of that for sure. So get through that. We've gotten through it. So, Josh, I'm going to open up the floor to you. You're talking about the iRacing Daytona 500. Please let us know what your preparations are like with the GSP car and what you're looking for from that race, and et cetera, et cetera. Give us the information and what else is going on in the world of sim racing.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's really going to be focused this week. Racing in the iRacing Daytona 500 this weekend. Looking at the schedule, I think the first, I mean, it's going to go through Wednesday or Thursday through Sunday, but I mean, really the best times to try to compete in this sim race, probably Friday night, sometime during Saturday, either like around 12 p.m. or like 5 or something like that, or on Sunday morning at 10 a.m. or at 9 p.m. on Sunday evening after the race. So, really, preparation just going to be try to just get in much seat time as I can, with the next gen car, trying to just get experience with the draft and everything. With the Indy 500 last year, and I was a lot more controlled my destiny and everything, and you certainly are able to navigate traffic pretty easily in the Indy cars for the most part. I mean, you really have to respect each other, but the next gen cars, really on top of each other, and you gotta be really aggressive in these cars to make things happen. And it's the tricky part because we're all gonna be packed together. Someone is gonna get too aggressive and cross the line, and then cause a big crash, and then eliminate like half the field. So that's gonna be the big challenge there, I think. And then when you think about it, the fuel strategy and everything that could come into play as well, especially if cautions, we end up, if we have a lot of cautions early on, but then later on we don't really have a lot of cautions, that might be a cause for fuel saving. It happened last year. Everybody ended up trying to save fuel with 20 laps to go. We were all like half throttle around the racetrack, and it was a freaking joke. So that's going to be interesting to see if that happens this year. I mean, based on my feeling, how the race is going to go, I know if I try to enter in on Friday night, that's going to be the one with, I think everybody's going to be most on edge, because they're all trying to, it's on Friday night, you're off work or whatever, doing whatever you've been doing, and you're unloading into the weekend. And so there's going to probably be a lot of mistakes made in that one. But there's also probably going to be the most eyeballs on that one from a streaming perspective. Not mine personally, or I mean, it could be mine as well, but just in general, if you make it into the broadcast portion, I think the ones that's going to have the most eyeballs is on Friday night. But I could be wrong there. But everybody's all going to be trying to get in on that one. And then Saturday, I don't know if I raced on Saturday last year, but Saturday's race probably be about the same, I guess. But I think if you want a really chill race, you probably have to wait until Sunday night, 9 p.m. Because everybody's going to be tired anyways and want to get it over with and get to bed. So that might be the strat there, and just run it after the real Daytona 500 and everything. But we'll see what happens. I will try to see if I can either do the Friday night or the Sunday night one, or maybe do both. I don't know yet, but that's the plan. I think going kind of a corollary to what I was talking about earlier, comparing this with the obviously because I'm Indy 500 winner as well, but if this race was in the 87 car on the old Daytona, I'd feel really confident about it. Because I've pretty much mastered that car. The next gen car, I mean, there's nothing, I mean, it's not like I haven't mastered it yet, but there's so much, it's so much closer. Everything is so much closer. And like I said, there's a very thin line of margin of error because, everything is so equal in those cars. So, you really, really have to be able to manage your time in the pack and everything. And it felt like, personally with 87 cars around the super speedways, you're definitely a lot more in control of your destiny, I think, at those with that combination. But of course, it's not being run with the 87 car, it's being run with the next gen car, the current iteration of Daytona with the repave and everything. So it's gonna be a bit of a challenge there, and I think you're really gonna have to just manage your time in the pack, try to stick around the back and wait around for everybody to take themselves out, and try to just be aware of everything with where people are on the track, and then just try to be up in the top 10 at the end of the race. With 20 to go, I think you want to be 15 to go, you want to be in the top 10. Start making your moves to try to climb up towards the lead. I have found trying to make a pass for the lead and then staying up there is a little challenging, because it seems like the draft is just with these underpowered cars being up front, like it's like you lose like 10 miles an hour. So we're in the back of the draft, you're up in the 199 close to 200 range, but then at the front, things start to slow down. You're at the like 190 range, and you almost, with the sequential shifter, you almost have to consider shifting into fourth gear to keep the RPMs up and try to stay up front and everything. And so that's gonna be a challenge there. And then also just trying to go for the lead. Like once you make the move to go for the lead, it's like you hit a wall of air and you slow down. So you really got to be able to have time your run really well, and try to get up front before the gap closes on the other side, in the lane beside you, whatever lane you're in, trying to pass for the lead, and then pass on the inside or on the outside, so or wherever. So that's going to be the thing there. I don't think handling is really going to come into play. So you'll probably be able to get away with doing 2 tire stops, but of course, with the next gen pit crews, 2 tire stops pretty much get done before all the fuel gets loaded in, so you don't really have to worry about that. So, we'll have to see how this thing goes. I'm just gonna have to really be, I think, first half try to be conservative. I think for the most part in the first half of the race, first 100 laps, want to be able to survive, because a lot of people are going to take themselves out. Last 2 years trying to compete in this race. The first year, wrecked out pretty much the beginning of the race, and then kind of rode around for the rest of it and was 4 laps down. And then last year managed. Well, I entered the Open Series one last year and then got wrecked out, and then decided I was like, come back later for the fixed series at 9 p.m. and did that one, and then I think finished in like 6th or 7th. So we'll see. I mean, it's going to be an interesting race for sure. So that's pretty much what I'm going to be focusing on this week. Maybe could try some of the other series, like the Indy cars or anything like that. But I think personally, just try to focus on the NASCAR stuff, really, and get as much seat time in the Daytona, whether it's the Xfinity or the trucks or the Cup car. Just try to get as much time getting used to the draft and being able to make moves and stuff like that. So that's gonna be my focus this week on iRacing, and of course, I will try to stream it. I will stream it. Of course, be on iRacing. Or on my Twitch TV / usailor2. Go in there, watch all my streams and everything. See if I can add to the virtual hardware, I guess. I found out earlier, or at the end of last year, when the whole controversy with iRacing and IndyCar, that they had digital certificates for winning the race. So I printed out, or I didn't print it out, but I have it saved on my computer here, the certificate for winning the iRacing Indy 500. So maybe I can hopefully get another digital PDF of the award certificate of winning the Daytona 500 on iRacing. So that's where we'll be trying to do on Saturday or Friday, Sunday, whenever. Just try to make sure I'm free for all that. So definitely will be competing in one of those days, and definitely let Phil, and let everybody else know, so you can either just have it on the background or check in whenever and watch me try to win this thing, so, or at least have a good run. So looking forward to it, and looking forward to having a lot of fun doing that for sure. And of course, closing the show here, of course, follow my Twitch as well, as I said earlier, and follow that Twitch TV / usailor2. Follow the Twitter profile for me, Twitter at JP Huffine. See all my takes, Super Bowl, all takes on racing, which definitely try to be active in there. See all my other takes on my other interests, all that stuff. Or of course, you can follow our YouTube page, which will have the videos uploaded to, and try to keep up with that every week. Go to YouTube .com/gripshot podcast. Go on there at gripshot podcast on YouTube, and go and subscribe, comment, like our videos and subscribe, hit us up, do whatever, and try to help us out here. So see what our listen to ourselves, or listen to or watch us, what we're talking about right now. So go in there and watch our stuff. So like, comment, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow me on YouTube, follow my Twitch stream. So that's all I got for tonight.
Yep. So definitely we'll go and watch usailor2 when Josh streams his attempts at the 500. Definitely watch that. He gives good commentary while driving as well, so it's a good deal. Kind of got that Aussie V8 supercars at Bathurst feel to it. For me, you can follow me at Philip G. Matthew on Twitter. Be posting more, I guess, now that the NASCAR season is going on, and of course with certain people that that we're connected with on the socials, try to get into some discussions and regarding racing and all that goes on. You can follow us at Gripstrip Pod on Twitter. You can find the Gripstrip Podcast basically anywhere you get podcasts. You can find it on my blog site, philipgmatthew.com. And yeah, I mean, that's basically it. I would be remiss if we don't mention there's been a shooting at Michigan State University with an active shooter that is still at large. So we give our thoughts to those who have, the one who has been, it sounds like I'm trying to go and make sure to be accurate on this, don't want to mess it up. Actor 11 shot, 2 deaths as of now. Yeah, so it's pretty brutal. I mean, it's just crazy how bad it's become and how widespread it seems to be, and how regularly, how much it's become a regular thing. You know, this is coming off of something that happened here and in my area, where some nut job took a U-Haul truck and was driving on the sidewalks and running over people, and he said he wanted to die. Well, considering how easy it is to act, I'm not going to go there. Just thinking of those people, thinking about the students and those affected at Michigan State University, and yeah, so hopefully better days ahead. Hopefully they find this guy and take him out. Instead of, you know, they seem to keep certain people alive for whatever reason, but if they're going to do that sort of stuff, just knock them off and get them out of here. It's one less toxic person in our society. So on that somber note, hopefully great racing, great safe weekend at Daytona for Speedweeks. We'll be back for episode 157. And we will talk about all things Daytona, who wins the Daytona 500, who starts their season off right in all 3 major series, and whatever else is going on. We'll get into news for other motorsports and make previews for California, the last race probably ever at California Speedway, and more. And of course, Josh, thanks as always for everything you do and being my sidekick, and hopefully you can get another dub in a major here at Daytona. And we'll talk about that. Hopefully you can talk about that one as well, and see if Tate Fogelman comes through with the pick. There's 3 good ones, or at least 2 of them are pretty spicy. So we'll see if that all comes off. So thanks for listening to Gripster Podcast. For Josh, I'm Phil. Take care. God bless and goodbye.